Hi Iniya. Thank you so much for letting me interview you regarding your career as a medical student at the Medical School of Wisconsin. I really appreciate you taking your time in doing this.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
I want to start off by asking about your day in a life as a medical student. How's it like?
Right. So right now I'm in my third year of medical school. And so it honestly, it's just waking up, going to the hospital, coming back and studying and using some extra time to go to the gym.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, why did you choose to go to medical school and what mainly interested you into it?
Right. So I think my journey into medical school has always been something that I've wanted to do since I was young. When I was younger, I always knew I wanted to do something in the sciences. Like I thought I was gonna become a scientist and cure cancer, is what I thought when I was younger. But then as I grew up through like middle school, high school, and with all my experiences with, volunteering at the hospital or being around doctors, that's when I decided I wanted to go into medical school. So I think in undergrad, especially, is kind of when you want to decide if that's what you want to do. And honestly, it doesn't have to be an undergrad either. People also decided post undergrad. So whenever you decided, I think there's always a couple of events that lead you into it. And so for me, it was just something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to, we all go into it wanting to heal people is why you initially want to go into medicine. And I think the more you learn about medicine and learn about the human body and how to treat it, the more interesting it gets.
That, that's really cool, the passion that you had for medicine at a young age and the fact that you're pursuing it right now. I think that's like really cool that you're following your dream of that.
Yeah.
From high school onwards, where did you do like your bachelor's and your master's, and how would you describe your experience there?
Right. So for my undergrad, I went to the University of California, San Diego. I majored in biochemistry and cell biology, and I also minored in business. And then I went all the way to Boston for my master's in medical sciences. And that was basically to help me, gain an extra additional experience of getting my master's and writing this 30-page thesis, but also getting more experience with research because my undergrad, I did research throughout my time there, but it just didn't feel fulfilling enough. I wanted to go more into the clinical side of research, which in undergrad, it wasn't clinical. For me, it was a lot of bench work. And personally, for me, I just wanted to experience more of the clinical side and how we can apply medicine to now.
Okay. So one of my club members asked this. Um, what do you have to do to prepare for the residency match? I personally don't know this because I'm interested in going into engineering, mainly like computer engineering, but she's very interested in going into the medical field. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so the match process, actually, I haven't gone through it. That's actually going to happen this year for me. So this is a big year. Um, as a third year medical student, you go through this. And you actually start, sorry, let me back up. Not as a third year, it's actually during your fourth year. The beginning of your fourth year is when you start going through the residency match process. And so that involves, turning in all these applications, getting interviews, and then you waiting until there's a single day where you get to open up an email that says where you're going to
Mhm.
and if you've even matched into the specialty that you're going to. And so then that basically all you do in medical school is to prepare for that, right? Like you're taking all these classes, you do lecture courses your first 1 to 2 years, and then you go into the hospital side of things where you actually become a junior doctor of sorts. You're a doctor in training. So, under the supervision of many people, you actually start treating people as a third year medical student, which is very cool. And so then that kind of all leads up to this match. Also doing other things other than medicine matter also for match. Like we're talking about, you still continue your volunteering that you did to even get you into medical school, or you pursue um, like leadership positions is important. So it's like, how do you become a well-rounded applicant? And that is very similar to how you actually get into medical school. You have to be a very well-rounded applicant to get in.
So residency matches are kind of similar to like a high schooler applying for like college type of thing.
Yeah, it's very similar, except I think the difference is that this match kind of determines your career. So
Okay.
what you'll be doing for 40 years is determined by this.
And another question that one of my club members also asked too was how do
Mhm.
you study for your USMLE test? And I think there are two steps to it too.
Yeah, so there's actually 3 steps to it.
Oh.
But in medical school, in these 4 years, you actually take 2 out of the 3. The third one will be taken in residency. And so, that just involves a lot of, there's so many different resources for that. And it's just honing into what resource you want to use. And so for me, for example, or not just for me, it's actually for a lot of people that you like to use this site called UWorld. And some schools will give that to you for free, like it's within your tuition. Otherwise, you have to pay extra for it. But that's like the best resource in terms of that. Also, after every single clerkship that I go through or every single rotation that you go through, you take an exam called shelf, and that should also prepare you uh for step. But also I feel, yeah. Yeah, so that's basically my answer for that, but I feel like this is kind of advanced. This is something that you do once you're in medical school.
Mhm.
And I don't know how it's going to be by the time you guys get to medical school, because so many things change on like a year-to-year basis.
Yeah. What do you do to study for the MCAT?
Yeah, so great question. So for the MCAT, some people they pay for some courses. So Kaplan, Princeton Review are big ones. I personally did a Kaplan course. I would definitely suggest doing either picking Princeton Review or Kaplan in terms of books, because it comes in a set of like, I want to say 4 books of all the sections of the MCAT, because it's an 8-hour exam. It's 4 test sections. I might be misspeaking on it. I think it's either a 6 to 8 hour exam. So it's a full day
That's
endeavor.
long.
Yeah, and that will never stop. All the steps are a whole day as well. Um, and so it is a very long exam, but so for each of those brands, they have those prep books, and so you kind of use those to help you. I would definitely recommend using this flashcard app on your computer. It's actually called Anki. I don't know if people have used it, but this is something I didn't know in undergrad nor when preparing for MCAT, but now I religiously use it. And I will definitely recommend anyone, undergrad, whatever you do, just use Anki. It will help you out so much.
What do you think med schools look for or consider the most in applications?
Yeah, so that's really hard to point out. As someone who is on the other side as well, now I'm a student interviewer for prospective students who want to come to the Medical College of Wisconsin. So it's interesting because it's not just one thing that will make you like a great applicant. It has to be multiple things. So that includes, academics, to being to volunteer work, to even work experience, to even doing like other extracurriculars, like playing basketball in undergrad, or um you don't have to be on the team or anything. It's more like intramural, like pursuing your passions is what will stand out the most, because I can tell you that everyone has good grades. Like everyone applying to medical school has good grades, and they have a good enough like MCAT score. So then what makes you you? Why should I want you to come for an interview, A, and why should you be admitted to my medical school? So it's the uniqueness, I think, is what makes people stand out over the what everyone else does.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
So, of all the research that you've done in medical school,
Mhm.
what field of expertise do you plan on pursuing once you graduate from med school?
Yeah, so right now I'm planning on pursuing ophthalmology.
What's that?
So yeah, so it's the doctor of the eye, basically. So it's doing any surgical intervention that's needed for the eye. So we're talking about, like cataract surgery is actually very common. Most people over the age of 65, you start forming some sort of cataract, and that's just when imagine your eye is like a camera and the lens of the camera gets really cloudy. You can't see through it properly, right? But the mechanics is working. So all you have to do is you have to remove the lens and put an artificial lens in. And now this new lens will see clearly. And so
Interesting.
it's a very simple, it's not a simple surgery, but it's a simple concept to understand, right?
Mhm.
But this is a big surgery that ophthalmologists do. They also manage some very big comorbidities to diabetes. Like diabetes, one of the changes you see in diabetes is first in the eye with vessels that are pretty weak. And so it could cause a lot of bleeding because of that within the eye. So ophthalmologists also manage that as well. So it's anything with the eye. I mean,
Okay.
those are just examples, but there's many more.
Yeah. What are some skills and methods that you use in your research?
Yeah, so my skills and methods, let's see. Okay, so I can tell you that I personally have been through every part of the research process that you can imagine, from formulating the topic or the hypothesis to all the way to the end with writing papers. Um, and I've done every step in between, writing the hypothesis, so you're creating a question, then you're going to create a data set that you can actually use. And
Mhm.
so I'm sure this might interest you, Arthi, since I assume you code right now. Do you
Yeah,
like coding?
yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat. Okay. Well, in the statistical world, there's a code called R. A
Mhm.
lot of engineers will use R or MATLAB. And so we use a lot of that to help analyze our data. So it's either that we have those skills to do it, or we have engineers actually working in our labs as well at the medical school that will help with it. Um, so we do that, and then you process all your data, and then after you process all your data, you have to actually analyze your data to see if any statistical tests work and to see if it even answer your hypothesis. And then from there, there's so many different steps. Like you either can go take it to a conference to present it, and you usually make like this nice poster, or you make a PowerPoint, you go present it to people of the field. And you can also start writing your paper, which is of high value in this type of field.
Could you provide an example about this process, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so in terms of how this process goes,
Yeah, like an example that you like have done like in the past or
oh,
that.
gotcha. Yeah, of course. So I think a good example of this actually is so I came into my first year of medical school. I wanted to do research in ophthalmology specifically. I had a summer where they actually pay you to do research here. And so I took it, and then I did it with my current principal investigator, or my research boss is what I like to call him. So if someone says PI, that's what that means. It means principal investigator. And so from our first conversation, we formulated a topic of what my research was going to be. And then throughout that entire summer, we collected a lot of the data and we started laying down a methods section. So it's laying down how you want to collect your data and how you're going to use your data. That is very important. Um, because without knowing those steps, then it's kind of like you have this question and you have this data, but what are you going to do with all of this, right? Like it has to be a very formalized process. So then that's when we did it. So my research specifically looks at just this longitudinal aspect of how your fovea, back of the eye, basically changes over time. And so then we created a hypothesis for it. We collected the data over a couple months. And now we just process the data. And so now currently I am going to present this work at a conference soon at the end of April. And so I'll just be making a poster for that. And I don't know if I have an example of a poster. Would you like to see an example of a poster?
I mean, sure, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so maybe we can pull one up really fast.
There seems to be like a lot of aspects in STEM, like you mentioned computer science, you also mentioned like engineering to like a lot of like I don't think you said statistics, but statistics too. So there's a lot of aspects in it too.
Oh, there's so many. Like there's so many people involved in STEM in general will do research. And so that will include all these steps from, I guess I can't really pull up the poster very easily right now, but so I apologize for that. Um but I can maybe show you it, Arthi, at the end um of this so I don't waste any more time trying to find it. But yeah, so basically we use like R code and MATLAB, for instance, to even help process the data. So extracting numbers and extracting the values that we need. So in order to do that, you kind of need a background in coding or in engineering. And so that's where like a lot of those people come in.
Do you know any programming?
Do I know any programming? Yeah, so it's funny. I took one semester of Java my fourth year of college. But then otherwise I learned how to do R code for statistics at my time in Boston because we were running all our huge data sets and there was no way like on Excel you can arrange it that fast. It's so much easier to import the data set, make a data frame, and kind of manipulate it from there.
So I noticed that you mentioned that you did your master's at Boston University, I believe.
Correct.
So you did your bachelor at San Diego and then you did your master's in Boston and now you're in Wisconsin right now. And do you think where you live affects your med school progress?
No. I am Yes, I guess it's hard like being away from people I know. So, all my high school friends are still back in the Bay Area where I'm originally from. My family's still in the Bay Area. But I think I've always had this mindset of pursuing the opportunity and pursuing the career at this point in my life. I am in my 20s. I think this is a great 10 years to kind of truly figure out where you want to live. And I've explored that, right? Like I've lived on the West Coast, I've lived on the East Coast, and now I live like in the Midwest. So I kind of have an idea now of what, different areas can be like of sorts. Um, and so now I can pursue, do I want to go back to California now for residency? Or even after residency, where do I want to forever live? And so I think overall, back to your question really fast, Does it affect the way I do med school? Not really. I have my friends here. It's funny, all the Californians kind of get together. So all my friends here are actually from California, minus one. Um, so there's just this bond that you have with other people from other states.
Mhm.
So, but otherwise, it doesn't really affect my med school experience. Like, it's a nice experience overall to get to know other people.
How do you balance your work and day-to-day life?
How do I balance my work or like work-life balance?
Yeah, the work-life balance.
The work-life balance. Okay, so um to be truth to be frank with you, it's actually pretty hard in medical school to have a good work-life balance. I think it tends to lean a lot towards the work side. Um, but otherwise, I do try to make time for myself because I can't keep going, to the hospital study. That's not fun for me. So I try to make time on my days off for friends. I also make time on my days off for myself because I think I always need, to have a break from other people, honestly, and kind of just, I don't know, watch a Netflix show sometimes, or do grocery shopping, do all the errands that I haven't done. But otherwise, but otherwise though, during the days that I do have to go into the hospital, I do try to get in a workout. So that's typically in the morning. I wake up kind of early for that. I wake up around like 4:45 or something to go to the gym because we have to be in the hospital by 7:30. And so that is like the one thing that you kind of have control over, but also, yeah, it makes me feel good. So I go to the gym, I go to the hospital for a couple hours, maybe close to like 8 hours at the hospital, and then 8 to 10, and then come back. I have to study, and then I repeat it. And so, yeah.
How does being in STEM affect like your research as a med student and your personal life?
Wait, can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Okay. How does it affect your personal life and your career?
How does STEM affect my personal life and my career?
Yeah.
So,
And when
STEM
I'm
is my,
when
oh,
I
sorry,
mean
go.
when I mean career, like your research as like a med student.
Okay. Um, so I guess I mean, I am in STEM, right? The research that I do is in STEM. It's in science. It's in medicine specifically. So I guess it just takes, I mean, I guess that's my answer to that. STEM is my research. I don't know how else to answer that question.
Like,
Um,
does it like play a role in like your personal life too, like outside of like work?
oh yeah, of course. STEM is everywhere. Like, you can't remove the math and sciences or engineering from life, right? So even just the basics of creating a budget, like you use math to do it, very simple math, it's arithmetic, but you still use it to create a budget, right? Of a year or like monthly budget or how much you can even spend in a week. Um, you use it every single time you go to the gas station. Like when you fill up your car, you calculate how much miles per gallon your car gets and to make sure that your car is running fine. Um, but otherwise, so that, like STEM is like day to day, right? You can't separate life from STEM, in my opinion. Um, and STEM has been my life for as long as I've known it. I've always loved science. I've always loved math. I think that's why I decided to pursue a career in medicine. Um, so, people around me are also in STEM. Like all my undergrad friends, even right? Like my high school friends, my undergrad friends, everyone has pursued a career in STEM. That's just the world right now that we live in where, like good careers are in STEM. And there's so many things to do. There's quite a variety. Like you want to go into engineering, Arthi? I'm in medicine, and it sounds like one of your um, people in your group also wants to go into medicine as well. But there's also other things like, people pursue their PhD, their masters. Some people become doctors of physical therapy, or dentists. And within engineering, there's so many. You have mechanical engineering, you have electrical engineering, um, you have biomedical engineering that combines everything together. So it's cool. It's a cool field to be in.
Yeah. Um, does being a woman in STEM affect what you do?
Not necessarily. So I obviously can't speak for other STEM fields other than mine. I know personally in medicine, there's slightly more women going into medicine than males. And so that's been great to see. Also seeing more female doctors in faculty positions has been awesome because I do think that the experience does differ between being a woman in medicine versus being a man. And so having people and like the diversity to amplify different voices in the field is awesome.
Yeah. It's nice to be a woman in STEM, actually.
Yeah, it seriously is. And I'm glad that we are living in a different world compared to a couple years ago, when there weren't so many women in STEM, but now it's more prevalent and that's great.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the goal of women in STEM is to not create like a completely female I mean, like
Mhm.
make it like 100% female and like get rid of like all the men type of thing. But it's like celebrating diversity.
Oh, 100%. No one is saying that. That is not what anyone is saying. It's just being able to provide resources and to provide a safe space for like women, especially in male dominated fields. And that tends, unfortunately, I think over the course of time, it has become very male dominated STEM. But
Yeah.
slowly we're getting there, right? Like medicine, like what I said, it's slowly becoming a little more equalized. I think engineer is quite on its way as well. So it's just gonna take time, but it's like people like you and like your fellow woman in STEM cohort that's gonna make it happen.
That's honestly the goal of our club. To just
That's awesome.
empower. So our goal is to mainly empower and encourage young girls to find an interest in STEM. And the interview that I'm actually doing with you right now is to give other people an idea to like, hey, there are many different type of careers in STEM, and this is one of them.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to be part of that.
Yeah, I'm glad actually. My last question for you is,
Mhm.
what is your advice for high school students who want to pursue a STEM career?
Yeah, so I think my advice for that would be honestly to always pursue your passion. Um, I think without having a passion, it's really hard to find your career for 40 plus years. This is something you're going to have to do on a day-to-day basis. And really, no matter what anyone says, who cares if that field you want to go into is male dominated? Really, who cares? Like, you should just pursue it. And there's really nothing else stopping you but you. Um, and I do want to say, like, STEM is not easy. Like in undergrad, STEM is not easy. I'm sure anyone in STEM could admit that. The classes are meant to be hard for a reason. Um, and especially when you're starting new in undergrad and you're learning more in depth the topics that interest you, it's gonna be hard, but you're gonna get through it and you're gonna be a great, woman in STEM basically in whatever career you do pursue. So you just have to really stick with it, but I promise you that after undergrad, it's gonna be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you taking the time and letting me interview you. This information is very interesting, even for like me who plans on going to engineering. I
Hmm.
find this very interesting, especially like your research ties in with like engineering and computer science. Like I didn't know that R is a programming language used in like medical fields.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
100%. It's coding is everywhere. Let me tell you, the data
yeah,
is everywhere. The science is everywhere. The math's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. Everywhere you look, it's there.
yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.